The restaurant was buzzing with the usual lunchtime chaos, but for her, it felt like just another ordinary day. She moved from table to table, carrying trays filled with steaming plates of food, smiling at the regular customers who greeted her with familiar warmth. There was something comforting about the rhythm of her work, the way the clinking of cutlery and the soft chatter of diners created a background symphony she had learned to move with. She enjoyed her job, but deep inside, there was a quiet longing she rarely spoke about. Since she was a child, music had been a secret world for her. The piano at her parents' old house had been her closest friend. While other kids played outside, she would sit for hours, letting her fingers dance across the keys, imagining grand audiences, bright lights, and the soft hum of admiration filling the room. Life had not given her many chances to perform, and over the years, her talent had mostly stayed hidden, tucked away beneath the demands of daily life and responsibilities. Music was her private escape, a place where she could be completely herself without anyone judging or expecting anything from her. Today, however, the atmosphere in the restaurant felt different. There was a sense of excitement that couldn't be ignored. A well-known event planner had booked the place for a special dinner, and a large group of influential people was expected. The staff had been buzzing with instructions and preparations all morning, arranging tables, polishing silverware, and making sure every corner looked perfect. She kept to her duties, pouring drinks, refilling plates, and guiding customers with her familiar, gentle presence. Yet, in the back of her mind, she felt a flutter of curiosity mixed with nerves. Something about today hinted at possibilities she hadn't felt in a long time. As she carried a tray of appetizers to a table near the center of the room, she noticed a sleek, black piano at the far end. It was beautiful, polished to a shine, with a small sign indicating it would be available for performances during the evening. Her heart skipped a beat. Seeing the piano stirred memories she had long buried. Late nights at home practicing in secret, feeling the music flow through her and imagining what it would be like if someone actually listened. She shook the thought away, reminding herself that this was a restaurant, not a concert hall. There would be no chance for her to sit there and play. She returned to the kitchen to refill drinks and noticed the whispers among the other staff members. Some were speculating about who might perform on the piano. One of the cooks chuckled, saying, "It'd be funny if she played, wouldn't it?" She felt her cheeks warm but laughed lightly, brushing it off. The idea was absurd, at least to her. No one could take her seriously. She was just a waitress. Her talent had always been her secret, something private and personal. She liked it that way. But at the same time, a tiny spark of excitement flickered inside her. The thought of playing in front of an audience, even a small one, was thrilling. As the afternoon passed, the restaurant grew busier. The clatter of plates, the hum of conversations, and the occasional laughter blended into a comforting rhythm she knew well. She moved gracefully among the tables, anticipating orders before they were even requested, smiling warmly, and offering a kind word or a gentle joke to keep the mood light. Customers often commented on how polite and attentive she was, but no one could have guessed the depth of her inner world. To them, she was simply the friendly waitress who always seemed cheerful and patient. They didn't know about the countless hours she spent practicing piano at home, the tears shed when a piece didn't come out perfectly, or the exhilaration she felt when a melody finally sounded right. In a quiet moment, as she wiped down a table near the window, she caught a reflection of herself in the glass. She paused for a second, studying her own eyes, and wondered what it would be like to be seen differently. Not just as a waitress, but as someone capable of amazing things. The thought lingered, almost teasing her, before she returned to her work. There was no time for daydreaming. Orders needed taking, plates needed carrying, and customers needed attention. Still, the idea refused to leave her mind, quietly growing stronger with every glance at the piano. By late afternoon, the special guests began arriving. She noticed the change in atmosphere immediately. The chatter of regular customers was replaced by the low hum of polite conversation among people dressed in elegant attire. Cameras flashed occasionally as attendees posed for photos, and she felt the subtle buzz of anticipation in the air. The restaurant felt different, charged, almost electric. She moved through the crowd with practiced ease, serving drinks, offering suggestions from the menu, and quietly observing the interactions around her. She saw the way people watched each other, the way they laughed and nodded politely, and she realized just how different this event was from the usual days she was used to. A few guests noticed her as she passed by, nodding politely or offering a quick smile. One woman remarked to her companion, "She seems so calm and composed, even in all this chaos." That small comment made her heart flutter. It wasn't about her appearance or her job performance. Something about being acknowledged for her presence felt new and strange, yet comforting. She quickly returned to her duties, but a small seed of confidence had been planted. Later, as she carried a tray of drinks past the piano again, a man from the event organizer's team leaned over to her and asked jokingly, "Do you play? Maybe you'd like to show us a tune." She froze for a moment, unsure how to respond. A laugh bubbled from her lips, nervous but polite. "Oh no, I couldn't," she said softly. The man smiled and nodded, probably expecting her to be modest or joking. But she felt something stir inside her, something she hadn't felt in years. The piano was there, waiting, and for the first time in a long time, she considered the possibility of sharing her music with someone outside her small, private world. As the evening progressed, the restaurant grew louder with laughter, conversation, and the occasional clinking of glasses. She continued her work, but every time she passed the piano, she felt the pull stronger. The thought of music, of melodies that had lived inside her for so long, began to feel urgent. She imagined her fingers touching the keys, the way the notes would flow, and how it would feel to finally let someone hear the music she had carried in silence. Her heart raced, but it was not fear. It was anticipation, excitement, and the tiniest hint of hope. She reminded herself that she was just a waitress, that no one would expect her to perform. But deep down, she also knew that some moments in life didn't wait for permission. Sometimes the right moment arrived, and you had to take it, even if your heart was pounding and your hands shook. As she continued moving through the tables, serving the guests with her usual grace and warmth, she couldn't shake the feeling that something unexpected was about to happen. That today might not end as just another ordinary day. And in that quiet, private corner of her mind, she began to imagine the music, soft at first, then growing stronger. She imagined the notes filling the room, capturing the attention of everyone around her. She imagined the faces of the guests, surprised and delighted by something they hadn't expected. It was a dream she had held on to for so long, one she hadn't dared to voice aloud. But tonight it felt closer than ever, almost within reach. The ordinary day was ending, but for her, a small door to possibility had quietly opened. She didn't know what would happen next, but she felt ready, in a way she hadn't before. There was a thrill in that uncertainty, a beauty in the idea that life could surprise you when you least expected it. And as the first notes of evening music began to hum softly in the background, she allowed herself a tiny, secret smile. Maybe, just maybe, tonight would be different. As the evening wore on, the restaurant became more crowded and lively. Guests in elegant dresses and suits filled every corner, and the soft lighting highlighted the polished wood of the tables and the shimmering crystal glasses. She moved gracefully through the bustling room, refilling drinks and checking on diners, all while keeping a careful eye on the piano at the far end. It gleamed under the warm light, and each time she glanced at it, a shiver ran down her spine. The piano seemed to call to her, reminding her of the countless hours she had spent practicing alone, dreaming of performing for an audience who could truly hear her music. The event organizers were busy coordinating every detail, and at one point, one of them leaned toward her with a mischievous grin. "You should play for us just a little," he said. The words caught her off guard. She laughed nervously and shook her head. "Oh no, I couldn't," she replied softly. He shrugged and walked away, probably assuming she was joking. But the seed of possibility had already been planted. The idea lingered in her mind like a persistent melody, growing louder with each passing moment. Her coworkers noticed the change in her expression. One of them nudged her lightly and whispered, "You should go for it. You know you can." She smiled politely but kept moving, carrying plates of food and refilling glasses. The encouragement was kind, yet the thought of performing in front of so many people made her heart race. She had never played for anyone outside her family or close friends, and the idea of being judged, even for a moment, filled her with both excitement and fear. She tried to push the feeling aside, telling herself it was better to stay invisible, to continue her routine without drawing attention. Despite her self-doubt, curiosity gnawed at her. She found herself imagining what it would be like to sit at the piano, her fingers poised over the keys, the room falling silent as she played the first note. The thought was intoxicating. She pictured the astonished looks on the faces of the guests, the hush of anticipation, and the gentle nods of appreciation as the music flowed. It was a fantasy, yet the more she pictured it, the more it felt like it could be real. Every time she walked past the piano, her pulse quickened, as if it were inviting her, daring her to take the first step. A few guests, noticing her passing near the piano, made playful comments. "I bet she could surprise us," one said quietly to another. Their words were teasing, but instead of making her feel embarrassed, they sparked something inside her. The idea that she might truly astonish people she had never met before was thrilling. She paused briefly by the piano, resting her hand lightly on the smooth surface, feeling the cool wood beneath her fingers. The sensation was electric, and for a fleeting moment, she allowed herself to imagine sitting down and letting her music speak. The restaurant's energy continued to build. Waiters and waitresses moved in a choreographed rhythm, delivering orders, clearing tables, and maintaining the perfect atmosphere for the high-profile guests. From her vantage point, she noticed the subtle interactions between the attendees, the polite laughter, the small gestures of respect, and the occasional impressed glance at the restaurant's decor and ambience. Amid all of this, she felt both invisible and hyper-aware, a silent observer to a world that seemed just out of reach. But the piano, patiently waiting at the end of the room, made her feel that she could step into that world, even if just for a moment. A small incident gave her the first real push. One of the guests, clearly looking for entertainment, called out playfully, "Hey, why don't we see someone play the piano?" Laughter rippled around the room, and several people turned to look at her. She froze, unsure how to respond. The attention was unexpected and slightly uncomfortable, but she could also feel a flutter of excitement. In that moment, the memory of her private practice sessions, the countless hours spent perfecting scales and melodies, came rushing back. She realized that she had a choice: continue blending into the background or step forward and let her music speak for her. Her fingers twitched almost unconsciously as she approached the piano. The crowd had grown curious, their chatter lowering into whispers. She could feel their eyes on her, weighing, judging, wondering. Her stomach knotted, but she reminded herself of the joy that music had always brought her. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about sharing a piece of herself, something that had been hidden for far too long. As she sat down on the bench, the weight of anticipation pressed on her shoulders, but she also felt a strange sense of calm. The piano was familiar, welcoming even, as if it had been waiting for this moment. She took a deep breath and let her hands hover above the keys. For a moment, she hesitated, listening to the soft murmurs of the crowd and the faint background music from the restaurant. Then, slowly, she pressed the first note. It was soft, delicate, but it carried a warmth that immediately drew attention. Heads turned, and conversations ceased as the audience realized that this was no ordinary performance. She let the music flow naturally, allowing her emotions to guide her fingers. Each note told a story, a mixture of longing, hope, and quiet strength that had been simmering inside her for years. The initial surprise on the guests' faces gradually gave way to awe. The melody was not complicated, but it was heartfelt and precise, a reflection of countless hours of unseen practice and dedication. People leaned forward in their chairs, captivated by the unexpected talent sitting before them. Her music filled the room, blending with the ambient sounds of the restaurant in a way that felt almost magical. She was no longer just a waitress. She was a storyteller, using the piano as her voice, and for the first time, the world seemed to pause and listen. As she continued playing, memories of her past mingled with the music. She remembered the small living room where she had first learned to play, the late nights practicing while the house was silent, and the satisfaction of finally mastering difficult pieces. Each memory added depth to her performance, infusing the melody with a richness that could not be taught or faked. The audience sensed it, even if they couldn't articulate why they were so moved. The performance was raw, real, and deeply human. A few guests whispered to each other, their voices tinged with disbelief. "She's incredible," one said quietly. "I didn't expect that from a waitress," another replied. The words stung slightly, not because she doubted herself, but because they reflected the low expectations people often placed on her based on her job. She smiled faintly as she played, letting the music speak louder than any words ever could. It was a moment of quiet triumph, a gentle vindication of the talent and passion she had kept hidden for so long. As the final notes lingered in the air, a hushed silence fell over the room. Then, slowly, applause began to build, hesitant at first, then growing into a wave of appreciation that filled the space. She looked up briefly, meeting the surprised, admiring eyes of the guests. For a moment, she felt a mixture of embarrassment and pride, a rare combination that left her breathless. The restaurant, once a place of routine and familiarity, had transformed into a stage where her hidden world had finally been revealed. Her co-workers exchanged looks of amazement and quiet congratulations. One of them whispered, "I knew she could do it." She nodded, feeling the truth of that simple statement deep in her chest. For years, she had doubted herself, hiding her talent behind a polite smile and diligent work. Now, for the first time, she saw what was possible when courage met opportunity. The evening continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. Guests approached her to compliment her performance, their words genuine and warm. Some even asked if she had ever performed professionally, and she shook her head, laughing softly. "No, this was just for tonight," she replied. The piano remained in the corner, silent now, but its presence was a reminder of the moment she had dared to step into the unknown. She returned to her waitressing duties, but the day had changed her. Something inside her had awakened, a quiet confidence that refused to be ignored. Even after the event ended and the guests departed, she lingered near the piano for a few moments, reflecting on what had just happened. The restaurant, once a place of ordinary routines, had become a space where she had shared a part of herself that few had ever seen. The music had not only surprised the crowd, it had reminded her of her own strength and potential. And in that quiet, lingering moment, she allowed herself to imagine what might come next, knowing that this was only the beginning of a journey she had long dreamed about. After the initial surprise and excitement of the piano performance, the evening seemed to take on a life of its own. The restaurant, filled with the soft glow of chandeliers and the quiet hum of conversation, felt different now. The guests who had witnessed her play were still talking quietly among themselves, their expressions full of admiration. She moved through the tables, continuing her work as a waitress, but her mind was elsewhere. She kept thinking about the piano, about the music that had flowed from her fingers, and about the strange, wonderful feeling of being seen for who she really was. As she refilled glasses and cleared plates, she caught herself glancing at the piano more often than necessary. Each time it seemed to call to her, urging her to play again. The memory of the guests' wide-eyed surprise and the applause that had followed made her heart race. She realized that the experience had awakened something deep inside her, a desire to share her music more fully, to let people hear the emotions that had been bottled up for so long. She remembered her childhood, the small room where the piano had first become her refuge. She had spent countless hours practicing there, learning pieces that had challenged her patience and discipline. The room had always been quiet, the world outside her door muted, so she could focus entirely on the music. She remembered the feeling of her fingers gliding across the keys, the way the notes seemed to flow naturally once she let herself relax and listen to the melody in her mind. Those memories brought a warmth to her chest, a reminder of the passion she had almost forgotten in the routine of daily life. The restaurant continued to bustle around her. Waiters carried trays through the aisles, guests laughed and whispered, and the clatter of cutlery provided a rhythmic backdrop to her thoughts. Despite the busy environment, she felt a strange calm, a sense that she was on the verge of something meaningful. The piano sat in the corner, polished and waiting, almost as if it were a silent partner encouraging her to take the next step. She had never performed in a professional setting, but tonight had shown her that her music could touch people, that it could create moments of genuine emotion. A small group of guests who had been particularly impressed by her first performance approached her with curiosity and excitement. They asked if she played often, if she had formal training, and whether she would consider performing at other events. She smiled politely, answering modestly that she had mostly practiced in private, never expecting anyone to hear her play. The questions were flattering but also made her aware of how extraordinary this moment was. She had never imagined that simply sharing her music, even once, could create such an impact. As she returned to her duties, she kept thinking about the piano, the way it looked under the soft light, the smooth texture of the keys, and the way the notes had felt as they left her fingers. It all lingered in her mind. She realized that she was ready to embrace this side of herself more openly. It was no longer just a secret passion hidden in the quiet of her home. It was something she could bring into the world, something that could make a difference, even if just for a moment, in someone else's life. Her coworkers noticed the change in her demeanor. She moved with a little more confidence, a subtle glow in her expression that hadn't been there before. One of them whispered to another, "She's different tonight, isn't she? Like she's really come alive." They didn't know the full story, but they could sense that something extraordinary had happened. She herself felt the truth of that statement in every step she took, every tray she carried, and every glance she gave to the piano in the corner of the room. The restaurant manager approached her quietly and asked if she would be willing to perform again for the guests, perhaps just a short piece to close the evening. Her heart skipped a beat. The idea of playing again in front of so many people was both thrilling and terrifying. She hesitated, feeling the familiar pang of self-doubt. Could she really do it again? Would the audience expect perfection? She took a deep breath and reminded herself that music was about expression, not perfection. The joy of sharing her gift was more important than any judgment. She moved toward the piano, each step deliberate and measured. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath as she approached. Guests who had been quietly chatting turned to watch, curiosity and anticipation evident in their eyes. She reached the bench and paused, letting her hands hover over the keys. The smooth, cool surface felt comforting beneath her fingers. She closed her eyes for a moment, imagining the melodies she wanted to play, letting her mind drift back to the countless hours she had spent practicing, learning to translate emotion into sound. As she began to play, the first notes were soft and tentative, like a whisper. The audience leaned in, drawn by the unexpected beauty of the music. Gradually, the melody grew stronger, more confident, carrying with it the depth of her emotions. Each note was a story, a fragment of her life, a reflection of her hopes, fears, and dreams. The room seemed to transform around her, the usual noises of the restaurant fading into the background as the music took center stage. She was no longer just a waitress. She was a musician, a storyteller, and the audience was captivated. Memories of her past intertwined with the performance. She recalled the quiet evenings at home, practicing until her fingers ached, the satisfaction of mastering a difficult piece, and the solitude that had once felt lonely but had now given her the strength to express herself. These memories fueled her playing, infusing the music with authenticity and emotion that resonated deeply with the listeners. She realized that her journey had not been in vain, that every private moment of dedication had prepared her for this very instant. The audience responded in ways she had only imagined in her dreams. Some guests closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. Others watched in silent awe, unable to speak, as if the melody had temporarily lifted them from the ordinary world into a space of wonder. The applause that followed was spontaneous and heartfelt, a collective acknowledgement of her talent and courage. She felt a mixture of humility and pride, overwhelmed by the realization that she had connected with so many people through something as simple and pure as music. When she finally stopped playing, the room erupted into enthusiastic applause. She stood up, feeling her heart pound with exhilaration and relief. Guests approached her, praising her performance and expressing genuine admiration. Their words were encouraging, but it was the feeling of having shared a piece of herself that mattered most. She had stepped out of her comfort zone, embraced her hidden talent, and found that the world was ready to listen. In that moment, she understood that courage and authenticity could create extraordinary experiences, even in the most unexpected places. As the evening wound down, she returned to her regular duties, but nothing felt ordinary anymore. The restaurant had become a place of transformation, a space where her music had altered the atmosphere and left a lasting impression. She knew that this was only the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one where her passion for music could coexist with her daily work, where she could continue to surprise and inspire those around her. The piano, silent now, remained a symbol of possibility, a reminder that hidden talents could emerge when courage met opportunity. The restaurant had grown quiet, but in that quiet there was a new kind of energy. Everyone present seemed to sense that something special was about to happen. The chatter of the evening had slowed to murmurs, the footsteps of waiters were lighter, and even the clinking of glasses seemed to fade into the background. She approached the piano, her heart pounding with anticipation. Each step felt heavier and lighter at the same time, weighed down by nerves yet lifted by the possibility of sharing her music with the crowd. The polished black keys reflected the soft glow of the chandeliers above, and she rested her hands gently on them, feeling the cool surface beneath her fingertips. She took a deep breath, letting it fill her lungs and calm her racing heart. She closed her eyes for a moment, remembering every quiet night she had spent practicing alone. Each note she had played, every mistake she had corrected, every melody she had imagined. It had all led to this moment. She let those memories guide her fingers as she began to play the first soft notes of a simple melody. At first, the sound was quiet and gentle, like a whisper, but it immediately drew the attention of the audience. Heads turned, conversations paused, and a hush spread across the room. She could feel the weight of every eye on her, yet instead of fear, there was a strange feeling of connection. The melody grew steadily, gaining confidence and strength as she moved her fingers across the keys. The notes were deliberate and full of emotion, each one carrying a piece of her story. Her hands moved with a fluid grace, shaped by years of private practice and a deep love for music. She let herself become fully immersed in the performance, forgetting the crowd, the restaurant, and the events of the day. There was only the music and her own heartbeat, synchronized in a rhythm that seemed to resonate with everyone present. Guests shifted in their seats, some leaning forward to catch every note, others closing their eyes to fully experience the melody. The initial surprise of seeing a waitress play so beautifully had transformed into admiration and awe. Some whispered to each other, unable to contain their astonishment, while others simply sat silently, captivated by the unexpected brilliance before them. The room was no longer just a restaurant. It had become a space of shared emotion, a place where music spoke more powerfully than words ever could. She allowed her emotions to guide her playing, each note reflecting a memory, a hope, or a dream she had carried for years. She remembered the small living room where she had first learned to play, the quiet nights when her fingers moved across the keys as her parents slept, and the sense of freedom and joy that music had always brought her. These memories infused the performance with depth and authenticity, creating a connection between her and the audience that went beyond simple talent. The music became a conversation, a bridge between her hidden world and the lives of those who had never expected to hear such beauty. As she continued, she noticed subtle changes in the audience. Faces that had been skeptical or indifferent were now lit with wonder and appreciation. Some guests were visibly moved, their eyes shining with emotion. Others nodded in quiet respect, recognizing the skill and dedication that had brought this performance to life. The applause that followed each phrase of music was tentative at first, but it grew steadily, a ripple of acknowledgement that encouraged her to keep playing. She smiled faintly as she moved from one passage to the next, feeling a growing sense of confidence and connection. The melody reached a more complex and expressive section, requiring careful attention and precise movement. Her fingers flew over the keys with practiced ease, yet there was a naturalness to her playing that made it feel effortless. The notes seemed to tell a story, carrying the audience along on a journey of emotion and imagination. She felt the energy of the room responding to her music, a silent dialogue between performer and listeners that filled her with both joy and humility. The sense of being heard, of touching people's hearts in a meaningful way, was exhilarating. She noticed small gestures from the crowd, hands gripping the edges of chairs, heads tilting to catch each sound, and eyes that never left her hands as they moved across the piano. Even those who had doubted her initially could not hide their amazement. The contrast between their expectations and the reality of her talent made the performance even more powerful. It was not just the technical skill that impressed them, but the emotion, the sincerity, and the sheer unexpected beauty of what they were witnessing. In that moment, she realized that music had the power to transcend status, occupation, and social boundaries. Her thoughts drifted briefly to her coworkers, who watched from a distance with admiration and pride. They had always known she was talented, but seeing her perform in front of such an audience was a revelation even for them. She could sense their silent support, their unspoken encouragement, and it added to her determination to give her best performance. Every note, every phrase, every delicate touch of the keys was infused with gratitude for the people who had believed in her when she herself had doubts. The piece reached its climax, a series of cascading notes that filled the room with a sense of culmination and release. The audience leaned forward, drawn into the music, feeling the tension and emotion build with each passing moment. She played with abandon, allowing her fingers to move freely, guided by instinct and emotion. The room seemed to hold its breath as the final notes approached, the silence creating a dramatic contrast that made the conclusion even more powerful. When the last note lingered in the air, a wave of appreciation washed over her, and she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The applause that followed was immediate and overwhelming. Guests stood, clapping and cheering, some wiping tears from their eyes, others simply smiling in awe. The room vibrated with energy, a collective acknowledgement of the talent and courage that had transformed an ordinary waitress into an extraordinary performer. She rose from the bench, her heart pounding, feeling both exhilarated and humbled by the response. The audience continued to clap, some calling out words of praise, others simply letting their admiration be felt through their presence and applause. She allowed herself a moment to breathe, to absorb the incredible reaction. The performance had been more than she had imagined, and the connection with the audience had been deeper than she could have anticipated. Guests approached her, expressing their surprise and delight, asking questions about her background, and complimenting her on the beauty and emotion of the music. She smiled, responding with modesty, but inside, a quiet pride and joy bloomed. The experience had validated her years of dedication and reminded her of the power of following one's passion. As she stepped away from the piano and returned to her duties, she noticed the lingering effect of her performance on the room. Conversations had resumed, but there was a new energy, a sense of shared experience that had been created through her music. Guests who had been focused on the event, the food, or the social interactions were now subtly changed, carrying with them a memory of beauty and emotion that would remain long after the evening ended. She felt a sense of accomplishment and gratitude, knowing that she had shared something meaningful and had connected with people in a profound way. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of activity, but she moved through it with a renewed sense of purpose and confidence. The piano, now silent, remained a symbol of possibility and courage, a reminder that stepping forward and sharing her hidden talent had transformed the ordinary into something extraordinary. She continued to serve the guests, smile politely, and offer gentle words of encouragement, but everything had shifted. The quiet power of music had left an indelible mark on both her and the audience, creating a shared memory that transcended the usual boundaries of a restaurant setting. As the event drew to a close and guests began to leave, she felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. The applause, the astonished faces, and the heartfelt compliments were still fresh in her mind. She realized that she had not only surprised the crowd, but had also discovered a deeper understanding of herself. The experience had taught her that talent, when combined with courage and opportunity, could create moments of true magic. The evening had transformed her, and she knew that the music would continue to be a guiding light in her life, offering both inspiration and a reminder of the extraordinary possibilities hidden within the ordinary moments. The room was alive with the echoes of the last few notes she had played. Even after she had returned to her regular duties, the energy from the performance lingered, floating in the air like a delicate fragrance. Guests were still murmuring among themselves, their voices low, filled with awe and wonder. She moved through the tables, clearing dishes and pouring water, but her mind kept returning to the piano. The experience had been more intense than she had imagined. She had shared a part of herself that had been hidden for so long, and the reaction from the crowd had been overwhelmingly positive. She noticed people watching her now with new eyes. Those who had been casual in their interactions earlier seemed different. There was a mix of respect, admiration, and curiosity in their gazes. Some guests approached her cautiously, hesitant to intrude, yet eager to speak. One asked if she had ever considered performing professionally, while another commented on the emotional depth of her playing. Their words were sincere, carrying a warmth that went beyond mere politeness. She felt a surge of pride but tempered it with humility. She had done something extraordinary, yet it felt natural, like fulfilling a piece of her soul that had long been waiting to be expressed. As she walked past the piano, she glanced at it and felt a strange mix of longing and gratitude. The instrument had been silent since her performance, yet it seemed to hum softly in memory of the music it had produced. She remembered the hours spent practicing alone, the quiet discipline that had prepared her for this moment, and the joy she had felt when the first notes resonated through the room. The audience had been captivated, but it wasn't just their admiration that mattered. It was the validation of her own journey, the realization that her passion and dedication had meaning outside her private world. Her co-workers could not hide their astonishment. They whispered among themselves, expressing pride and admiration, and some even looked at her with a newfound respect. They had always known of her talent, but seeing it revealed in front of a live audience was transformative. Their silent encouragement and belief in her abilities bolstered her confidence even further. She realized that her performance had not only touched the guests, but had also inspired those around her, showing them the power of courage and authenticity. The guests' reactions continued to evolve. Some were visibly moved, their eyes glistening with tears, while others sat silently, absorbed in the lingering beauty of the music. Conversations were hesitant and respectful, as if no words could fully capture the emotions they had felt. A few approached her with compliments that went beyond technical skill, praising the emotion, sincerity, and story she had conveyed through the piano. She responded with gentle smiles and polite words, but inside, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had not only played music, she had connected, resonated, and left a lasting impression on those who had witnessed her talent. A moment came when the event organizer approached her with a proposal. He asked if she would consider performing at future events, mentioning that her ability to surprise and captivate an audience was rare and valuable. Her heart skipped a beat. The idea of stepping into a larger world, of sharing her music with more people, was both thrilling and intimidating. She paused to consider, feeling the weight of the opportunity. Yet, the memory of the applause, the astonished faces, and the silent admiration gave her the courage to nod. She realized that this was more than just a one-time experience. It was an opening, a doorway to possibilities she had never dared to imagine. As she continued her duties for the remainder of the evening, she noticed subtle but significant changes in the room. Guests who had initially been focused on socializing or the event's purpose were now more attentive, quieter, and reflective. The music had created a shared experience, a moment of emotional connection that transcended the ordinary. She felt a profound satisfaction in knowing that her performance had touched people in a meaningful way, leaving them with a memory of beauty and human connection that they would carry with them long after the evening ended. Her own emotions were complex and layered. She felt relief, knowing the performance had gone well and had been received positively. She felt pride, recognizing the years of practice, discipline, and dedication that had led her to this moment. But most of all, she felt a deep sense of gratitude for the piano, for the opportunity to perform, for the audience who had listened, and for the courage that had allowed her to step forward. She understood, in a way she hadn't before, that talent alone was not enough. It was the willingness to share it, to risk vulnerability, that created true impact. Guests approached her intermittently, offering kind words, sharing their astonishment, and asking questions about her musical background. Each interaction reinforced the realization that she had made a difference, even if small, in the lives of those who had been present. Their reactions were genuine and heartfelt, a reflection of the emotional resonance she had achieved through her music. She smiled softly, acknowledging their words, but she also felt a quiet joy that went beyond compliments. It was the knowledge that her gift had been recognized, appreciated, and experienced in its full depth. Her coworkers continued to offer subtle signs of support, giving her encouraging looks and gentle nods. Some quietly congratulated her in passing, while others expressed amazement at how seamlessly she had transformed from a humble waitress to a performer capable of captivating a room. Their recognition added to the sense of accomplishment she felt, reminding her that the courage to step forward and embrace her talent had effects beyond the immediate audience. She was beginning to understand that sharing one's gifts could inspire and uplift others, creating ripples that extended far beyond the initial moment. As the evening drew closer to its end, the atmosphere in the restaurant was filled with a mixture of satisfaction, admiration, and lingering wonder. Guests lingered at their tables, reluctant to leave, still discussing the performance in hushed tones. The energy in the room had shifted, transformed by the music and the story it had told. She moved among the tables, completing her duties with care and attention, but she could not ignore the sense of personal transformation that had taken root within her. The evening had revealed not only her abilities but also a new understanding of herself and what she was capable of achieving. When the last of the guests finally departed, leaving the restaurant quiet and empty, she lingered near the piano, reflecting on the events of the evening. The applause, the astonished expressions, and the heartfelt compliments were still vivid in her mind. She realized that her music had created a bridge between her private world and the lives of those who had witnessed it, a connection that transcended words. The piano, silent now, stood as a symbol of opportunity, courage, and the transformative power of sharing one's true self. In that quiet moment, she allowed herself to feel the full depth of what had happened. She had faced her fears, embraced her talent, and shared it with a world that had not expected it. The experience had been both humbling and empowering, a reminder that moments of courage could lead to extraordinary outcomes. She understood that this was only the beginning, that her music could continue to touch lives and open doors she had never imagined. The evening had changed her, revealing the power of authenticity, talent, and the willingness to step into the unknown. As she finally left the restaurant for the night, she carried with her a renewed sense of purpose and a quiet confidence. The performance had shown her that she could be more than she had ever allowed herself to believe. The world had listened, and it had responded with admiration and respect. The experience would remain with her, a memory of courage, beauty, and human connection that would inspire her in the days and years to come. She knew that the piano, the music, and the reactions of the crowd had created a turning point, a moment where her life, though ordinary in many ways, had been touched by something truly extraordinary. The restaurant had returned to its usual quiet, the clatter of dishes and soft murmur of the few remaining staff filling the air. She stood near the piano, her hands still tingling from the last notes of her performance. The memory of the audience's astonished faces, the applause that had filled the room, and the heartfelt compliments from guests and co-workers alike lingered with her, creating a warmth that spread through her chest. She realized that what had happened tonight was not just a fleeting moment. It was a turning point in her life, a realization that her talent had meaning and could touch others in profound ways. She walked slowly through the empty tables, reflecting on the evening. Each face she had seen during her performance, each expression of surprise, admiration, and emotion replayed in her mind. The realization that she had made people feel something through her music was both humbling and empowering. For years, she had hidden her talent, performing only in the solitude of her home, never imagining that it could have such an impact on a room full of strangers. Tonight had shown her that her passion and dedication could not only be acknowledged but celebrated. Her co-workers approached her quietly, offering congratulations and expressing their awe. One of them said softly, "We all knew you were talented, but seeing it like this, it's incredible." She smiled, feeling a surge of gratitude and connection. The support from those who had seen her struggle and grow in her craft made the moment even more meaningful. She realized that her journey had been shared in small ways with those around her, and now it had been fully recognized. The experience had strengthened not only her confidence but also her sense of belonging and purpose. As she tidied up the area near the piano, she noticed a few guests lingering, hesitant to leave. They approached her with genuine admiration, asking questions about her musical background and expressing how moved they had been by her performance. She listened patiently, responding with modesty, but inside, a quiet pride swelled. She had not only shared her talent, but had also created a lasting impression, a memory that would stay with these people long after they left the restaurant. The thought that her music had reached beyond herself, touching others in unexpected ways, filled her with joy and a sense of accomplishment. The event organizer came over to her with a smile, extending an invitation to perform at upcoming gatherings. She felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness at the prospect. The opportunity was daunting, yet the memory of tonight's success gave her the courage to accept. She understood that this was not just about performance. It was about sharing her gift, connecting with people, and embracing the possibilities that life offered when she chose to step forward. The piano had been her companion and guide, leading her to a moment where she could fully express herself and be recognized for her abilities. She walked to the back of the restaurant to collect her things, reflecting on how much had changed in just one evening. The ordinary routine of her job had been transformed into an extraordinary experience. She realized that courage, even in small doses, could create moments of beauty and significance. The decision to play, to let her music speak without fear or hesitation, had opened doors she had never imagined. It was a lesson in trusting herself and embracing the unexpected opportunities that life presents. As she stepped outside into the cool night air, she felt a sense of liberation. The streets were quiet, the world calm after the bustle of the evening. She took a deep breath, feeling the night settle around her, and allowed herself a moment to reflect on everything that had happened. The applause, the admiration, and the connections she had made were all reminders that her talent had value beyond her own enjoyment. Music had become a bridge, connecting her inner world to the lives of others, creating moments of shared emotion and understanding. Her thoughts drifted to the future. She envisioned herself performing in different venues, sharing her music with a wider audience, and continuing to grow as a musician. The confidence she had gained tonight would guide her, a steady flame reminding her that she was capable of more than she had allowed herself to believe. The piano, silent now in the restaurant, had been a catalyst for this transformation, a symbol of possibility and courage. She knew that her journey was just beginning, and that each step forward would be shaped by the courage she had shown tonight. The next morning, she returned to her routine with a renewed sense of purpose. The ordinary tasks of her job felt different now, infused with the knowledge that she had something unique to offer the world. The memory of the performance lingered, reminding her that talent, when combined with courage and opportunity, could create moments that were not only personally fulfilling, but also profoundly impactful for others. She moved through her day with a quiet confidence, aware that her life had shifted in ways that would continue to unfold. As she reflected on the events of the previous evening, she understood that this experience had given her more than recognition. It had given her a sense of self-belief and possibility. She had faced her fears, shared her hidden talent, and found that the world was ready to listen and respond with appreciation. The lessons of courage, authenticity, and the power of following one's passion were now deeply ingrained, shaping her outlook and her choices. She felt a renewed commitment to nurture her music, to continue exploring her abilities, and to seize opportunities to connect with others through her art. Over the coming weeks, she began to receive invitations to perform in small gatherings and community events. Each performance was a new chance to share her gift, and each audience provided affirmation that her talent had meaning and resonance. She approached these opportunities with the same humility and dedication she had always maintained, yet with a newfound confidence born from her experience at the restaurant. The journey was ongoing, a blend of learning, performing, and connecting, each step reinforcing her belief in herself and her abilities. The memory of that night, the first time she had truly stepped out and shared her music, remained vivid in her mind. She remembered the way the audience had reacted, the sense of awe and emotion that had filled the room, and the personal realization that courage and passion could create extraordinary moments. It was a story she carried with her, one that continued to inspire her in her daily life and in her music. The experience had not only transformed her perception of herself, but had also left a lasting impact on those who had witnessed her performance. She knew that life would continue with its ordinary routines, challenges, and responsibilities, but the memory of this moment would serve as a guiding light. The courage to share her hidden talent, to step forward despite uncertainty and fear, had opened a world of possibilities. She understood now that her music was not just a personal escape, but a gift capable of touching lives, creating joy, and inspiring others. Each note she played carried with it the potential to connect, uplift, and leave a lasting impression. As she sat quietly at the piano in her own home days later, practicing and reflecting, she felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. The experience at the restaurant had taught her that extraordinary moments could arise from ordinary circumstances, that courage could transform both the performer and the audience, and that authenticity and dedication were powerful forces. She played each note with intention and heart, knowing that her journey was ongoing and that the possibilities were endless. Her story became an inspiration to those around her, a reminder that talent, when nurtured and shared with courage, could create unforgettable experiences. She continued to perform, quietly at first, and then for larger audiences, each time embracing the opportunity to connect, express, and inspire. The restaurant performance remained a milestone, a turning point that had shown her the beauty of stepping into the unknown and sharing her true self. It was a night she would never forget, a night that had changed her life and revealed the extraordinary potential within the ordinary.